Hey guys, I'm back with Minion. We're at a really good part and I couldn't handle leaving you guys hanging. One thing I really miss is your guys' thoughts and your predictions on what's happening. So I'm sure that if Lizzie's listening, I'm sure her mind's going. If Jude's listening, I'm sure his mind is really turning about who everybody is and what's going on and what Professor Edson's working on. I miss hearing your guys' voices and your thoughts. So feel free to share your thoughts with me if you have them. At the end of the last one, I only read from 178 to 184, so I said the wrong thing, but I'm sure you guys have really good thoughts and you're really thinking hard. Sam, if you're listening, I'm sure you have really good thoughts and you're probably predicting what's actually happening because you're really good at that. I miss all the rest of you. I'm sure your minds are going. They always like to share their thoughts a lot, so Minion, we're back. He's heading home to find his dad. I'm on page 184. He's sitting at the table when I arrive, staring at the door, looking as if he's been waiting for hours, even though it is still the middle afternoon and he was the one who kicked me out to begin with. Maybe he spotted me on the street, or maybe he saddled me with a tracking device. I check my pockets for little black boxes and I find only what's left of the cash. We have to talk, he says. Funny, I was about to say the exact same thing, except when parents say we have to talk, it usually means I have to lecture you. But I'm not going to let that happen. I have way too much to say. You saw the announcement. Yes, but that's not what we need to talk about, he replies softly, and for the first time I notice that his end of the table holds a stack of brochures. Full color, neatly folded. The first one says, "Come experience the wonder of Montana." You don't know anyone that lives in Montana. I walk up to the table, put my hands on the back of the chair. Oh. I say, all right, so you don't want to talk about the masked maniac who just came on television saying he had a plan for taking over the world. Fine. Let's talk about what you're working on downstairs that I'm not allowed to see. I don't want to talk about that either, he says, coolly adamant. Of course not. I want to look at him. I want to stare him down, but my eyes keep flitting back to those brochures, wondering what he has up his sleeve this time. Fine. Then what do you want to talk about, Dad? Want to talk about the blue freak of nature who you kept hoping will just fly up and away, or the fact that you came home this morning with donuts and $100 bills? Maybe you want to tell me what the phone call was all about, the one you made in the middle of the night. Or maybe you want to tell me why, if you're trying so hard to protect me, that you're shutting me out. Because it feels like you are pushing me away. Because you are into something, aren't you? All this. I spread my arms to indicate the house, the city, the universe, whatever. All this hiding, it's really starting to get on my nerves. So, what? What is it you so desperately need to talk to me about? I realize I'm almost shouting, but he had it coming. He brought it on himself. Dad just sits there calmly. Wyoming, he says. What? I'm sure I didn't hear him right. Or Winnipeg, he adds. He slides the pamphlets to the center of the table and fans them out like a travel agent. I see brochures for New Haven, Fort Worth, Texas, Cheyenne, Toledo. I shake my head. Winnipeg's in Canada, I tell him, my big heaping pile of frustration suddenly blanket with confusion. Nothing happens in Canada, I explain. Exactly, he says. And then it dawns on me. He's not suggesting a vacation. He wants to leave. He wants to leave New Liberty, abandon this house, the gangs and the graffiti, Zach and Tony and Indiana Jones and Mr. Yoon, and the little place in the corner that sells the best pastrami sandwiches, and all the schools I never even bothered to go to, and all the people I never even got to know, and the one girl I'm just starting to know. Wait, you want to move? I pull back the chair and I take a seat on the edge. I don't think New Liberty is right for us anymore, he says. It's not safe. Safe? I choke. When was it ever safe? I mean, seriously, I can make him a list, rattle off the string of Saturday evening carjackings and brawls between street thugs, the kidnappings and the purse snatchings and the random acts that made for a New Liberty weekend, but of course, that's not what he means. Michael, please don't make this any harder than it has to be. You're right. I should have realized this sooner. I hoped maybe it would even itself out, but last night was too close. And today, with everything else, he can't even finish the sentence. And I see it finally. He's afraid. Even if he won't say it. His skin has turned white. His normally shrewd eyes saddled with concern. He is scared. When? I ask. Tomorrow. Maybe the next day. Take what we need, start fresh, and just leave the house? More or less, he says. I don't even want to know what that even means. Or I'm afraid that I already do and I don't want to think about it. Dad wouldn't want to leave a trace of his work. We would leave nothing behind. And how are we going to get there? To Winnipeg or whatever it is you think we're going? What do we do with all of our stuff? We drive a Honda Civic, Dad. We buy new stuff, he replies. We will have money, enough to build a brand new life. Money? So all of a sudden money isn't a problem anymore? I think about what Zach said once about Dad and me going on a crime spree, retiring in Aruba or Venice or Wichita. I think about leaving Zach behind and this house where I've spent the last 4 years, where I learned to ride a bike and mix explosives, where I fell asleep each and every night listening to the sound of the freight trains rumbling underneath the South Street Bridge. I can feel the penny settled beneath my heel. And what if I don't want to go? It is not up to you. I'm your father. It's my decision. I can see the spark return to his eyes now, summoning his courage, or maybe just losing his patience. This isn't easy for him either. New Liberty is his home, even more than it is mine. The house and everything in it, another of his boxes, built up over the years. He can't just pick up and leave it all behind. So now we have to run, because you've gotten in over your head and all your quotes and little inventions aren't enough to protect you anymore. This is not about me, Dad murmurs, fixing me with his eyes. I point to myself. Me? I shout. How is this suddenly my fault? I didn't say it was your fault, he shoots back. But you have to understand. I have responsibilities. I've made promises. To who? I yelled. I'm up from my chair now, fist on the table, leaning across from him, staring to him. Promises to who? To Tony? Or is it to the dictator? Because that's who you're working for, isn't it? That freak in the silver mask. It doesn't matter who, it only matters why. I'm doing it for you, for us. I don't want you doing me any favors, I snap. It's not a favor, I told you. I have an obligation. To who? It doesn't matter. Who? I shout. I have an obligation to your father, darn it. He slams the table, and the Toledo skyline slips over the edge and plummets to the floor. I watch it fall, and I just stare at it for a moment. I promised your father, Dad says again, slumping back, instantly deflated. Right before your father left you, I promised him. Right before he left you for good. I suddenly feel dizzy, as if the whole floor is tilting like an amusement park ride. And if it wasn't for the chair still behind me, I probably would join Toledo on the floor. He made a promise to his father. Let's find out. Turns out he was there. The night that I was abandoned, left in the very back booth of the White Castle in my car seat with $400 cash and onion grease on my fingers. That night, St. Mary's came to get me. Benjamin Edson was there. But not just there. He was the one who left me. I sit and stare out the window as he tells me about it. I sit and stare up at the shadowy sky, at the smattering of stars that are barely bright enough to pierce the haze of electric afterglow that settles like a fog, light pollution. The reason you can't see much from here. The mask we put on the sky to push back the darkness. Dad speaks in little more than a choked whisper as he tells me the story, spilling the one secret he's kept bottled up. As he talks, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out that last picture the one of just a friend. Setting it on the table between us, it shows two men leaning against each other, dressed in matching blue button-down shirts. The one I can tell instantly is a young Benjamin Edson, the professor, fresh from his college years. Face fuller, hair redder, freckled cheeks. The other is taller, stockier, thick brown mane, rugged, goateed face. He looks slightly familiar, like someone from an old commercial you watched too many times growing up. They both wear sunglasses. Your father's name is Renfred, he explains, though we just called him Rennie. The few of us who really knew him. He had several others, allies, kept a wallet full of fake IDs. He looked a lot like you, same furrowed brow, same questioning expression, never quite certain of anything. He had a great sense of humor, though, and that's not all you had in common. Dad, Benjamin, presses 2 fingers to his skull and narrows his eyes. Suggestive hypnosis. Mind control. Abracadabra. He could do it too. My father, my real father. He was the one who passed down my gift. I acted surprised when you told me. I had to, of course, but you have to admit, I took it in stride. Your father was adamantly a much better, more accomplished telepath. He was older, had more time to practice. He could convince a camel to part with his hump. He saved us quite a few times with his talent. He was your partner, I say? The professor nods. We started working together when we were young, small-time robberies. We weren't interested in hurting anyone. Your father was a good, he starts to say, then stops, revises. He was honorable in his own way. Between my gadgets and his knack for getting people to see things his way, we made a formidable team. Probably could have made a real name for ourselves, but we weren't that ambitious. Rennie was never interested in taking over the world. We would have been content taking only what we needed. But then he met your mother. Gina was her name. At least that's what she told us. She was beautiful, I have to admit, though I'm not the best judge. You've got her eyes, I'm afraid to say. I think about my green eyes, same color as the man sitting across from me. For some reason, I always thought that meant something, that maybe it linked us somehow. Guess I was wrong about a lot of things. Your mother had a history as well, had gotten her fingers dirty more than once. Our paths merged and we became a trio. She had no powers, no talents to speak of. What she did have were connections and an uncanny ability to get your father to do whatever she asked. She used him, Michael, sought to abuse his power. She got us involved in more dangerous work, kidnapping, extortion, said we needed to up the ante. Your father held her in check, or at least tried to. We had a few scrapes, mostly with the cops, sometimes worse. Barely escaped from Mr. Malleable once. He says a little wistfully, but that's a story for another time. Suffice it to say, we built up a sizable tab with the authorities, though they still didn't know who we were. And your mother still was not satisfied. She was selfish, wanted it all, and she had cast such a spell on your father that I wasn't sure she was using some mind control of her own. I guess love will do that to a person, make you look past their faults. I guess, I murmur. Before long, our threesome became a foursome. He waits for it to sink in, and I point to myself. Dad counts in his head 14 years and 5 days ago, in fact. Wait a minute, I say. You're telling me that I know when your real birthday is? Dad nods. We've celebrated it every year. You just didn't know it. Here's Duke's ball. 5 days ago, a special occasion. I think about the monkeys and the giraffes, the fatherless lizards, the cotton candy, the ice cream, as close as I'm ever going to come to a birthday cake. No candles, nothing to make a wish on, but it was something. They went to the zoo for his birthday. You changed him, Michael. Rennie didn't want to drag you into the life we've fashioned for ourselves. It was a choice we made. But it wasn't one he felt he could impose upon you. So he tried to get out, except your mother disagreed. She called him a coward, said he was wasting a golden opportunity, squandering his talents. When he insisted on quitting, she took nearly all the money we had and disappeared. I snatched the picture of the two of them, Benjamin and my father, from the table, and I stare at it. All this time, I imagined my parents as total strangers, not even real people, a couple of college kids too burdened by loans to raise a kid. A teenage mom dropped out of high school. They never had a real story. They were just extras, like more than props. And here they were, my two dads, standing side by side. And you never saw her again? The professor shakes his head. I don't know where she is, Michael, or even if she's still alive. All I know is that she left your father when you were still an infant. Who knows? Maybe she's even the one who turned him in. Turned him in? You were only a few months old when the authorities caught up to him. Arrest warrants for the whole host of crimes. Most of them were her idea. Except she had disappeared, using your father as a scapegoat to cover her tracks. The day the cops found him, he showed up on my doorstep with a diaper bag on his shoulder and a pistol in his belt. Said it was too dangerous for you, that they were after him. He made me promise, Michael. He made me promise to take care of you. But I couldn't. I was 26 years old, a criminal myself. What did I know about raising a child? My father built rockets. My grandfather built coffins. I come from a long line of men who knew how to package death, but none of them knew anything about life. Dad's hands were shaking, even though he has them clasped together. His voice wavers from him. So you dumped me, I mutter, at a White Castle? He frowns, guilty and disappointed. It was close to the orphanage, he explains. I needed you to find a better home than any that I could provide you. Say what you will about St. Mary's, but they kept you safe, safer than I could. Then why not just leave me there? Because you didn't belong. You said that yourself. They couldn't appreciate what you were capable of. They were brothers and sisters, but they weren't family. Neither are you. I snap, though as soon as I say it, it comes out. I regret it. I watch the words cut into him. He physically contracts, but I'm not going to take it back. Part of me wants him to hurt for hiding it all this time, for not trusting me with the truth. Your father and I were very close, he whispers. So then what happened? The night I took you, the police cornered him. I still don't know what possessed him to carry that gun. We never used guns. He could have gone along with them, waited for a moment when he was alone with one of them and performed his little trick. But they surrounded him, and he panicked. Maybe he was reaching for it, maybe he wasn't. It didn't matter in the end. None of us are bulletproof. As soon as he says it, he realizes a mistake. Almost none of us. I sit just there, motionless. I know I'm supposed to feel something, ticked off, heartbroken, confused, but more than anything, I just feel empty all of a sudden, hollowed out, leaving me raw inside. I don't even know how to respond. I always planned to come back for you, Michael. You have to believe me. I never let you out of my sight once. I had boxes, cameras, hidden in every room of St. Mary's. I watched you grow up. I always knew what you were capable of. I try to think back to St. Mary's. I was told every day by the sisters at St. Mary's that the Father was always watching over me. I never believed them. I made a promise, he says again. I should have told you sooner. I thought that somehow I was protecting you. I didn't want you to grow up hating him or me. You had a name, an identity. I didn't want to take it away from you, not until you were old enough to make one for yourself. I'm sorry. He leans in, expectant. I know what he wants, but I don't move. I don't say a word. I leave him there, hovering, holding his breath. The silence stretches to a minute, then 3. Sitting there in the kitchen above our lyre, pamphlets for half a dozen new cities spread out over the table. I think about the last few years, about all the little black boxes we built together and those nights spent on the couch with our shoulders pressed, popping each other up, inhaling popcorn and pretending we were part of something remarkable. Duke, stop. These moments, they all seem diminished somehow. I can't put my finger on it. I never hated my real parents. I didn't know them enough to hate them, but I never loved them either. Benjamin Edson was different. At least he was supposed to be. I stand up slowly. It takes everything I have just to get my legs underneath me. What do you say to a man who promised to keep you safe and then abandons you at a hamburger joint? I've been passed along from one father to the next, to the next. At least I thought I'd settled down. And now there's Winnipeg, Wichita, Cheyenne. Dad, Benjamin Edson, the professor, looks at me desperately. It doesn't change anything, he insists. We are still who we are. Tomorrow, we can get back to normal. And there it is. That word again. Do you really believe that, I ask? I can see him floundering. He doesn't know, not for certain, but he still looks me in the eyes. He gives me that much. I could tell him anything, and he would believe me. Instead, I push in my chair and I head to the hallway, the picture of the two men still in my hand. I stand outside my room. He still sits at the table watching me, like he has for the last 14 years. Aren't you going to say something, he asks. I rest my hand on the doorknob. I think back to the first time we met. Do you want to see a magic trick, I ask. The question obviously takes him by surprise, but I don't wait for an answer. I just go to my room and shut the door. It takes a couple hours, but I finally find it. In an archived news of the New Liberty Centennial, I guess at the dates based on what he told me, based on the days I was delivered into St. Mary's clutches. I scanned through 1,000 bulletins and articles. They don't have his real name, but it must be him. It's too much. A 200-word blurb underneath a much bigger article laminating the departure of the Vindicator, one of the last supers to watch over the city. Wanted criminal, it says, shot and killed in the early morning hours by 5 of the NLPD's finest. While reaching for a gun, a few allies are given. None of them are Reniford or Rennie. A list of outstanding warrants. No officers or civilians were injured in the confrontation. No sense that justice or injustice had been done. No mention of a 3-month-old kid. Just another minor criminal leaving a chalk outline on the street, not even worthy of a bold-faced headline. It's his father's death he found in the newspaper. And in other news, the New Liberty Library reopens at its brand new location on the city's north side. There is no picture to go with the article, but I have one anyways. At least now I know where I come from. I know where my gift came from. I know who, even if I'm still not entirely clear why. As I close out the window, I notice the banner headline running along the top of the current local news feed. Where is the comet? It says, next to a picture of the dictator pasted from his special televised announcement. I click on the picture and zoom in, letting the man's silver mask fill the screen. I can see myself in the reflection, and I don't look good at all. I'm going to stop there. I'm wondering, curious if anyone thought that was going to happen. I'm on page 198, so I read 184 to 198.